But I have to share a little bit of trivia, Slapshot related trivia with Pete, because when I was in Syracuse for the Marlies Syracuse Crunch game, there were 3 fans dressed up in Charlestown Chiefs jerseys as the Hansons, and me and Kevin McGran from the Toronto Star discovered that was one of 4 buildings where the movie Slapshot was filmed. In fact, the I think it was the Crunch locker room is the locker room that the police knock on the door and say the Hansons.
Yes, it definitely was.
It's funny. I just showed my kids who are my daughter turns 15 tomorrow, and my son is 13 in March or next March, and I just showed them about a month ago when the anniversary of Slapshot came around. I showed them Slapshot, and
the real version.
The real version, yeah.
Here's the thing. There's something about it. I just watched Slapshot with a friend of mine last year, right? We both sat down, we watched it. They have a nude scene there that's 10 times longer than any nude scene you'll see in any movie nowadays.
Yeah, we did.
Like the camera just never goes away.
I did fast forward through that.
You did? Okay.
I said that was kind of ridiculous. Like, it wasn't, but for my son, who really does not like cursing, like I don't curse. My wife curses like a drunk sailor, but I don't curse.
Was the nude scene with Hanrahan's wife?
Yeah, no, I think it might be.
I don't think it was.
So anyway, so my son was really offended by all the language, and I had to explain to him, well, this is really how they talk to each other, in the locker room. It doesn't mean anything. It's just this is the way they communicate with each other. It's not like because hasn't watched many R-rated and heard many F-bombs, except for Saturday nights when my wife's watching hockey. Besides that,
the whole thing there is it reminded me of our first ever player appearance for the Predators. We take Sebastian Bordelot to Donaldson Christian Academy, a school-wide assembly. The hall is filled. There are some parents in there too. It's Q&A time for Sebastian. Sebastian, how is it you decided to give up your education and go full bore into hockey? Well, sometimes you have to decide what it is you like to do and say, fuck it, go for it.
Very nice.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Here's what look, I curse a lot. I admit it. I don't have kids, so I'm not really corrupting anybody. But I think in a movie setting, I think if the curses are creative, then it's great. And Slapshot has some very creative cursing.
Oh, yeah. No, it was fun. My daughter, who played, as a freshman on the varsity high school soccer team, has heard everything now. Like, she's actually, the high school, you haven't heard anything until you've been around, high school varsity soccer girls, they're cursing up a blue streak too. So yeah, she's.
Did you explain to them though, like this is something I saw the movie originally with my dad, like when it first came out, and my dad was shocked that Paul Newman was in such a movie. Not because my dad was a sports guy, he wasn't a hockey guy, but he was like shocked that Paul Newman would do this. Did you kind of let them know what Paul Newman really was, and to do this kind of movie was really outside of the?
Yeah, no, I did. I totally did, and I said that was the great thing about this, because this is an era when, if you were me or you, Russ, or all of us in this world, this was an era when to be a hockey fan was sort of to be like a fringe fan. Like you were a fan of something, in at least in America, you were a fan of something fringe, and it wasn't like something that a mainstream guy like Paul Newman would be connected with. So the fact that a mainstream guy was connected with a hockey movie was huge, and that was something I do remember very clearly. That this movie never would have gotten made without that. It was just one of those things that there's no way.
And he begged to get in it. He waited for George Roy Hill on a curbside while George was at some sort of breakfast meeting in West LA.
Pete, I don't know if you've ever. Last thing about this, and we can talk about the Preds and the other series, but I don't know if you ever read the book about the making of Slapshot.
Oh yeah, Jonathan Jackson. It's an excellent book. If anybody can get it out there, I think it's still in print. But the thing that surprised me the most was that the first guy who had an inside track on the Reg Dunlop character was Al Pacino, and this is Al Pacino after Godfather 1 and 2, after Dog Day Afternoon and Serpico. I just I don't get the feeling that it would have been the same movie with Al Pacino as opposed to Paul Newman. It would not have been. No, not at all.
Paul Newman had the ability to be like the rough, tough guy, but my favorite.
Although we know that Al Pacino can swear because Scarface had the most F words in the history.
That wouldn't have been a problem, no. But
he can't skate.
He can't. Paul actually did skate, right? Because he played hockey. I remember he grew up playing hockey a little bit with his brother, so he could skate a little bit.
Listen, John Wayne couldn't skate. We know that.
Yeah.
Tried.
My favorite scene, though, and it's funny, like obscure scenes in this movie that I forgot about when I was always watching it again, was when he goes and meets the owner of the team for the first time, the woman owner of the team. And the way that all goes down. Now, for some reason, was so interesting. I don't know, maybe just where I am now and having met like executives from hockey teams, it was just fascinating to meet somebody who was just, this is like something like a tax write-off type thing that they're peddling sort of on the side. That was really fascinating. I don't know why that's.
I thought the most interesting thing, and I only found this out later after this year when they talk about the whole making of it, is that the dirtiest, skeeviest apartment was Bruce Boudreau's. That's the one they used. Like, that's funny.
Yeah. That's funny. And nowadays, when Crispy and I have doubts about somebody, he'll nod at them and he'll go, quicker than you can say Jack Robinson.
Oh, yeah. That's so great. That's so great. And that line has become such an important line. I don't know why, but just to all of my friends, it's just like that's a line that I hear all the time. All right, so here goes. I'm going to introduce you. I'll introduce Pete after we do our little thing here. But hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, May 24th, 2017.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are joined by one of my absolutely favorite people in all of hockey, play-by-play man from the Nashville Predators, Pete Weber. How are you, Pete?
I'm doing great, and I really regret I didn't get the chance to introduce myself as Jerry Mathers.
as the Beaver.
As the Beaver.
Yes.
That's perfect. Yeah, well, okay. We can do it again. So Pete, this is what I will always remember about Nashville because I can't help it but yesterday and so just everybody else has to deal with this a little bit, but to actually remember going to Nashville the first time and you picking me up from the airport, you taking me to lunch, like the first time I went down to Nashville, and it was just the nicest thing in the world. And ever since that moment, I just completely fell in love with the thing. And now it's so much fun. It's got to be so rewarding for you to see the whole hockey world and just come around to this whole thing.
It's rewarding, it's edifying, self-satisfaction, and all of that. But the most important thing to me is just to see the pure joy and exultation on the faces of so many, not just inside the building, 17,000 plus, but they consulted with the family of Max Yasgur from Bethel, New York, and they tried to put a Woodstock-like situation outside the building, and they have largely succeeded. And they're trying to expand it right now. The mayor is holding a meeting today trying to find some way of expanding that. And who knows? I mean, I know we can't get Richie Havens in here, but maybe I can get Sly Stone and rescue him from South Central L.A.
Oh, wait, I have the easy answer. Why don't they just, and I forget the name of the place that they play, but why don't they just have everybody go to where the Titans play and show it up on the big board there?
There you go. Yes, go to Nissan Stadium. That would be perfect.
Well, hopefully, I don't know if it would be a good thing to have a pond and skinny dipping there as they did at Woodstock, Pete, but
I think it would.
It could work. I mean, I think that what's so funny to me is how hip it's become to sing the national anthem at the games too, and how like everybody's got to be a part of that, and how we wish those record companies would have bought luxury suites like 10 years ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Including Terry Pagula's record label here.
Oh, really?
Wait, he has a record label? I didn't know about this.
Yes, he does.
I didn't know that either. Wow.
I believe it's Black River, and his wife Kim, her brother, is here running it.
See, I thought it would be called 30th Place Records.
Oh, oh, Michael.
Sorry.
Oh man. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this team, Pete. And it's to me, I've been trying to think of beyond just the fact that they seem to have been touched by like the hockey gods in some way, shape, or form. Just they're and it's all playing out like the DVD you'll watch at the end of the year. It feels like as you're watching, you're just seeing like, that moment is this part of the DVD, that part's this part of the DVD, and it's just fantastic. But I was trying to think of why it is to me that they've survived, or so many other teams have survived, and I think to me the thing that they've shown the best is the ability to play any way they have to, like against any kind of team that they have to. And that you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. And it's definitely a next man up sort of team here. But
Yeah.
you gave me another idea there, Eck. And I'm not to be sacrilegious, but how about a Sistine Chapel-like ceiling done where the finger of the Lord is touching that of Peter Laviolette and David
Could be scary. Could be scary.
Yes.
But no, it feels like it, doesn't it? I mean, it just feels like it. Like every possible. The other night, watching that the game 6 was just incredible. You know, you're sitting there, you're watching this, and you're just thinking, they can't possibly win this game after the 5-minute power play, and Anaheim just tore it up, started coming on and on and on, and yet they still.
Anaheim drew energy from that penalty kill.
I totally agree. That was the turning point. That would have been if the Preds had not won that game and they would have lost in Game 7 or whatever. That would have been the moment when everybody would have looked at that 5-minute power play.
Well, Pete, and I wrote something for Hockey Buzz yesterday, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the Predators' victory, but I also think that they benefited from a really subpar goaltending performance from Jonathan Bernier. It was one of those performances I consider it like an anti-Grant Fuhr type of performance where he gave up a goal at the absolute worst time 3 times in that game. He only had 8 shots through 2 periods.
Right.
He's up the goal 3 minutes into the third by Sissons, and then when Anaheim comes back again, improbably, and ties up the game, it was a great goal. It was a great shot. But at some point during that game, Bernier needed to make a big save, and he never did.
And that's the intriguing thing to me from that matchup. Bernier's career has been stellar against Nashville.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in that game for whatever reason.
I'll tell you what. People are probably wondering why I'm wearing this New York Jets shirt. But, Pete, you'll appreciate this. The other day when Colton Sissons got his hat trick, I basically said he was the equivalent of A.J. Dewey for Anaheim. Like A.J. Dewey intercepted Richard Todd 3 times in a playoff game. We will never see another playoff hat trick from Colton Sissons. I'm pretty sure of that. But that night, he had the magic in his stick, man. It was unbelievable.
Like the night he had the hat trick in Tampa earlier this year.
Yeah.
And it was the strangest hat trick of all.
It really was.
The second goal was into the empty net, not the third.
That's my Eklund goal that I've tried to get going for 15 years and has never caught on. The goal that you score after you put the goalie back in.
Right.
I've always thought that goal needed a name.
I thought Russ was playing tribute to Ryan Fitzpatrick. And
listen, don't even go there.
No. Okay. Richard Todd. Where's Bill Simpson when we need him?
Yeah.
Oh, man. What a day that was.
Don't go there. I was at that game. Don't go there. Here's the bigger picture, though, Pete, and you could probably put a good spin on this. What you may not realize that's going on. You may see the stories, but here in Philadelphia, we're getting like tons of revisionist history now for Peter Laviolette. Sometimes it's just not meant to be. Like sometimes a coach runs his course, and I think it's horrible when the media says, well, look, we should never have given up Laviolette. He's going to his 3rd Stanley Cup. And it's like every situation's different. You can't,
What could all those cities say about Mike Keenan?
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, Laviolette had the great quote, the first coach in a long time to take, or maybe ever, to take 3 teams to Stanley Cup final. His quote was, "I get fired a lot," and
well, Scotty Bowman said the same thing basically, and he did 4 teams.
Yeah. I mean, I loved Laviolette when he was here. He is an intense coach, and it does take its toll. It takes its toll. There's only so many years. And you could argue. I mean, it's very revisionist or whatever. But if this year doesn't go well for the Predators, you would have heard all about that. You would have heard, how intense Laviolette is, how he runs his course over time.
I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was an NBC show, and I can't remember the name of it. They sent me the screener, and I wrote about it, where they followed Peter Laviolette with this other guy, this host, and they went fishing, right? And it was fishing in South Jersey, and his family was there. And I got to tell you, he was intense even fishing.
Oh, yeah. He's intense watching his children's game on the plane on the computer. Yeah. I mean, he's taking notes.
Right.
Russ, the show is called The Blacklist.
No, stop.
Oh man, I was so upset. I mean, anyway, I think that, I mean, losing Johansson, losing losing Fiala, to me, that just plays into, again, like the whole DVD. It's like, it's part of the video. It's just, It's incredible. And all these guys, you look at them, you're like, okay, this is an AHL team at points. And yet, and any other team out there should be able to beat this team right now. But that team is going to win and go to the Stanley Cup Finals. You're watching Game 6, and I kept thinking to myself how awesome that and crazy that was. It just kind of gives hope to the whole thing. But what I wanted to get on to next with you, Pete, is Ottawa and Pittsburgh and how you feel Nashville works against each team, because I won last night the bet. I bet my son's Kermit the Frog puppet.
You did
that Ottawa would win the game, and I did win, and I picked Ottawa to win the series. But and I'm still, I don't know, I'm not feeling the greatest about that, but we'll see.
You're still wrong on that one.
Might still be wrong on that one, but
they got to play it. They got to play it.
They got to play it. And the bottom line is, last night Ottawa, Pittsburgh could not get it done, which is very surprising. And and people talked about that game and the fact that obviously Anderson was great, but I saw a really interesting thing today that he did not stop that many great shots in that game. There weren't.
No, he didn't.
No, well, let me bring this up because I want Pete's input on this. Is the fact that the Daly goal that was waved off. I mean, we're getting to the point now where the goaltender interference call to me is extremely subjective, and I take you back to Game 6 where I didn't think it was any doubt that Perry did not interfere with Rene, but I was in the minority because a lot of people thought the initial contact and then the couple seconds afterward was still should have been considered interference, and that was a tying goal. I mean, I thought Daly, it was sort of incidental contact on the goal, and that it should have been allowed. I mean, it's really, I'm getting to the point where in the Stanley Cup Finals, somebody's going to lose a game based on one of these bad calls.
Yeah, I hate that. I have been in regular contact throughout the playoffs with Gary Fraser, because the one thing we know is there is no standard that we can pass along to the fans,
right?
So we can tell them what to accurately expect from the rendering, either from the Situation Room in Toronto, from the guys on their no longer mini iPads, they're iPad Pros.
iPad Pros.
Well, here's the other thing, Pete. Like, forgetting about the Rene one, because I thought it was interference, because I think you do need 2 seconds to be able to reset yourself, because you're not like a pop-up jack-in-the-box where something, a goalie needs a second to get back in the position. I do feel that way. But with this goal, the problem was the fans of Ottawa were like, well, Daly pushed him. And it's like, you could push a goalie a little bit, right? But here's the thing. The goalie pushes back. And now we're not even accounting for the goalie pushing back. I mean, because clearly – Anderson was pushing back. There was a lot of scuffling, and it's not like Daly was just so strong that he just pushed, Anderson through the net. That's not the case.
Right. There were 3 of us watching that game at a sports bar last night, and all of us thought it was going to be allowed.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be allowed too. I was upset.
It's a massive call when you're playing against the defensive team to take a goal off the board is massive.
Yeah, and I know Malkin scored after that. Now, I consider the fact that Malkin's goal would happen one way or the other if Daly had scored or Daly not scored. It changes the complexity of that game completely. If Pittsburgh is up 2-0, you force Ottawa to open up, which they're not used to, and I think changes the course of the game. So it being 1-0 at that point, then Ottawa gets that 5-on-3 and ties the game. I mean, that call, that non-goal call, changed the course of that game and maybe the series. You never know.
Did it ever? At least it set up the Senators to have a chance in a Game 7.
Here's the other thing, Eck. You have referees right there, and nobody blew a whistle. If they felt like this was so egregious, how come we never hear a whistle? They didn't. I mean, that's the thing about it. It's like they should have blown a whistle the minute Daly touched them if they really felt like that was the case and it was interference. But they didn't do that.
I know. It was pretty crazy. I mean, and just to me, I can look at it several different ways. I'm as a goalie, I've never been a fan of when players push you into the net. I do see that happening, and you do see that going on. It was an incredible play by Daly to actually pull his stick back enough to get it while he was pushing him. I mean, it really was something. And
Murray didn't have his best game either. I mean, the 5-on-3 goal that Murray gave up, you could say, you know what? He probably should have had that covered in the corner. The other goal, his eyes were taken away. I'm not going to blame on him. But the 5-on-3 goal, you know what? That was a little weak by Murray. It was.
And I do think it's hard to put into perspective, because I do think that Malkin maybe doesn't score, because Malkin's goal was definitely a possessed Malkin type goal, where he's completely.
You get him mad. He gets like baby you.
And when he gets that way, you're not going to stop him. You're either going to going to score, or you're going to take a penalty, one or the other. So, and that's his best bet. But now you set up this really interesting Game 7. in Pittsburgh. The Penguins have all the experience. You would think they'd be able to pull this one out. But I was looking at the two teams against the Predators over the years because I'm a real big fan of matchups. And the interesting thing about the Senators with Nashville, I don't know if you've gotten into this yet, Pete, but the fun thing about it is they have not played after American Thanksgiving since like 2013.
Wow.
Yeah. So it'll be a totally new opponent.
Yeah.
Other than the fact what Lawrence Filoni and the video coaching staff is doing, which they get another full night of breaking down video now as a result of last night. But it will be, he did this back in October, but now we got to talk about May.
Yeah. They played 9 days apart or 8 days apart this year. So they played at home and home. And Nashville won both. Nashville won 5-1 and Nashville won 3-1.
Yeah.
But that was in November,
But to me, that's okay because it's the other conference. It's when you get these other playoff series the Predators have had recently, where series against Chicago you hadn't played since December, and that's in your own division. There's no reason for that.
There is no reason for that. That totally defeats the purpose of what they're trying to do with this, which is the whole point of this. And the Preds have won 7 of the last 10 against Ottawa, but it's so hard to put all that in perspective. I know, but it's a little different. With the Penguins have had the Predators number to a degree. But this year, I was trying to see that this year, the Pittsburgh won. They split again, huh? They did split. Yeah. So Nashville
lost in Pittsburgh.
Here's something I wanted to ask Pete.
Okay, I was going to say one thing about Pittsburgh, the matchup.
Yeah.
When Pittsburgh came here in October, it was the day after the Predators team got sick in Detroit. Guys were leaving the bench and just heading back to the dressing room. Not a place you wanted to be at that point in time. Then it's a back-to-back. Come back home and face the defending Cup champions. Had to call 5 guys up from Milwaukee just to populate the bench for the game, and they win that one. So the improbabilities are incredible. Yeah, UC Saros really won the respect of the coaching staff that night.
Yeah, really? I remember hearing about that one.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's always the fascinating thing to me about how this plays out. And then they go in at the end of January. Pittsburgh won 4-2 there. But one thing that's kind of strange about this team is they really do take a lot of shots against each other. I don't know for whatever. So this is an example of the Predators being able to play either style because if you're it's a very different series, obviously, with Ottawa or Pittsburgh. That's to me, that's the benefit of the Predators being able to do that.
But here I got to ask Pete something because they said something on the broadcast which struck me funny when Doc Emmerich talked about these sagging attendance and even the prices that were being charged. Pete, I got a feeling that somebody from the NHL told NBC to make sure they put that on the broadcast because they were kind of miffed that Ottawa had maybe priced out the average fan and they weren't sold out as a result.
That might have been the case very well. I mean, so we've had really 2 playoff games in Ottawa this year where those sorts of concerns came up and voiced in this case on NBC. You wonder about that to be certain. I mean, I remember when the first time the Predators played the Red Wings in the playoffs in 2004, and I remember that lower bowls for a first-round series at the Joe were going for $500.
Wow.
And I'm not talking secondary market. I'm talking face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I watched most of the game on Hockey Night in Canada. Obviously, we can get it in Buffalo, Pete, and I didn't hear them mention the attendance. But now that's not to say that they didn't. They may have when I wasn't watching, but they didn't. And it's curious if that's the case. If the league did say to somebody, mention it. It would make more sense to mention it on a Canadian broadcast than on a U.S. broadcast because the U.S. broadcast isn't being fed into Canada. So
right.
I mean, money is tight up there, and it's tight everywhere. And if they price themselves out, it's easier sometimes to sit back.
I think they were sending a message like, if Ottawa makes it to the Stanley Cup and there's empty seats for the Stanley Cup, that is not going to make the league happy.
It's not money being not money being tight. It's a number of different factors. It's the factor that the building is outside of the city of Ottawa.
I don't think that matters for a playoff game.
No, I know, but I'm just it's the fact that Ottawa is a government town and there are probably as many Leaf fans in Ottawa as there are Sens fans.
Yeah, but somebody from TSA showed the soccer team yesterday and they had like a 25% attendance on the same night.
Wow. Yeah, so I mean it's I feel bad when the city has to face that. My big logistical question is this, Pete: where the hell are they going to put the NHL media for the Stanley Cup Finals in that building?
Tootsies.
Oh, in our building? Yeah, probably. On the roof there. Well, like they did for the All-Star game, they will take over the section of seats in front of me in 310 and likely over to my left in 309. And that will be what they have to do. I would love if you could retroactively go on and do what we had in Edmonton and Calgary and build a big catwalk up there and have the media up there looming right over the edge of the boards.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh.
Bring back my odd press box. I'll take that.
Oh,
no, that's in Toronto is somewhat that way too, isn't it now? I mean, when I was
the Coliseum is like that. I didn't like that. It's awful.
No, Pete, what they have to do is take the hanging gondola from Cops Coliseum and ship it to Nashville, because walking to that thing is like tempting death.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And then we could have a big special on NBC, Sportsnet, or whatever, of the Walenda family, so showing how reporters can get there.
Oh man, well I hope I always worry about the people that they displace with that kind of thing, like when they move 310 and 309.
Yes.
Like,
I gotta wonder, Pete, does anybody write about or give? Yesterday I gave a lot of props to Jeff Keelty. He comes on my show on Sirius a couple times a year. He's done a great job. He's been there 10 years. He's pulled out some great late round draft picks. Like, I admit I'm a better draft guy today than I was in 2004, because in the 8th round I didn't know who the hell Pekka Rinne was then. Today I might have had a better handle because we have a better handle on European prospects. But Keelty and his staff have done a great job. I kind of wondered, does he get enough credit?
Well, I think he should get even more because of what you say. And I think I've told you the Pekka Rinne story before, right?
Yeah, I think
the European scouts were high on him. So Ray Sherrill, then the assistant GM, goes over to see him play, but he didn't. He only saw the pregame skate because Nick Backstrom, later the Minnesota Wild, was the guy who was starting in front of him.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I'm so happy for him too, Pekka Rinne. Jeez, what a great thing. What a great experience for him. He's been phenomenal. And absolutely, I was not, and you can settle an argument here, Pete, for me, because this has been a big thing about Gibson. We've been fighting on the show about.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. I personally didn't think Gibson was playing well in the series at all. And maybe that's just me. I felt like he was out of position. He was getting lucky. He looked tired. He was down on his knees a lot. And everybody else, I mean, numbers were good, but it felt like to me that you could get to him. And that's why the Predators could have these third period comebacks. It felt like you could get to him. What was your thought on Gibson?
Well, I'm going to talk about what I saw from him in the Edmonton series. And I thought he was quite vulnerable there. Yeah. And actually Edmonton, without goaltender interference calls, again, getting into that, Edmonton might well have gotten rid of the Ducks beforehand.
Yeah.
But I think that he was playing through injury or attempting to. But you can really see in the first period of Game 5 in Anaheim on Saturday how the Predators came in shorthanded once, had 2 opportunities, and it took him. You talked, Russ, about having 2 seconds to get reset. Yeah. It took him far longer than that to get back up onto his skates.
Yeah, and I guess that was the hamstring, and
he had to be playing hard. I mean, I felt it was just they mentioned it on
But you saw the difference, Like, if nothing else, the difference of Bernier and Gibson was the difference of the series.
Yeah, but I still think that the Predators win that game with Gibson in there, and I do, because
I don't know how you could say.
Well, it's hard to say because everything changes, with Gibson.
That's exactly right. Everything does change.
To say, but I can't sit there and say that the Predators are going to get 8 shots in 2 periods against Gibson, because I don't think they would have. I think they would have attacked them very differently.
Yeah, but Gibson wouldn't have given up 2 goals in the first 3 shots. That's my point.
But sometimes scoring 2 goals in the first 3 shots is not the greatest thing in the world, and I thought that's what I felt like that hurt the Predators in this game as much as it helped them.
It changed the pattern of the game, and the fact that the Predators were sitting in a 1-3-1 from the 4-minute mark of the first period until the third. But
it's hard to turn it back on when you've done that for 2.5 periods. It's like so they sit there and they wait and they wait and they wait. And then eventually, they're waiting to be tied, essentially. And then they get tied, and then they do get the best goal of the game. Really the best. The only goal I think Bernie didn't have a chance on was the winning goal.
What I want to ask Pete is there is a feeling of Schadenfreude in Toronto and in many markets in the NHL, taking pleasure at the dismay and pain of the Montreal Canadiens, the fact that PK Subban is going to a Cup final, but not as a Canadian, but as a Nashville Predator. The thing is that Shea Weber was there for so long and was such a a foundation piece of that town and that franchise. That what is the feeling that they're finally making it, but it's without Shea Weber in the lineup?
Well, I don't know about going to Schadenfreude here. I don't play a psychologist or an ancient psychologist, even on podcasts or buzzcasts here. But Shea Weber is still revered here, very much so. And the franchise has done everything they could to let everybody know that is the feeling about him here in Nashville. Now, the PK Subban, the other part of that trade, naturally it's going to come up right now. The Predators staged a select a seat thing about 10 days ago, and in a day and a half they sold $1 million worth of tickets.
Yeah, that's awesome.
During that span. And as I'm walking around the concourse, I'm running into a number of people speaking French who had come down for that event, hoping they could snag some playoff tickets.
Wow.
And hoping they would run into PK Subban. I mean, that's the draw. That's the magnetism that he emits. That's something very special.
That is special. And I mean,
like Montreal's problems are not Shea Weber's problems. Like Shea
no.
And that's what people are sort of doing. They're sort of like saying, well, look, Shea Weber, it's like, this is bigger than just the two players.
Shea Weber played great in Montreal this year. And no, the problem is that, the thought process of why you trade PK Subban in the just entering the prime of his career for Shea Weber, who's in the prime, but he's probably maybe 2 or 3 years away from starting to decline. The machinations of why you do that deal, and it's everything, in the locker room, or the fact that he was making $9 million, and not what was on the ice, because on the ice he's one of the best defensemen in this league.
And I'll never forget doing the talk shows in Montreal on June 30th, the day after the trade, where they are accusing me as if I was David Boyle, but accusing me of just ripping them off.
Yeah,
I spent saying, hey guys, you're getting a pretty darn good player right here at Shea Weber. Enjoy him.
I am still not ready to call that trade. Like, as if there's a way you have to call it. I mean, I think the Predators are right here with Shea Weber, just like they would be with PK Subban. I honestly don't think. I don't think. And we talk about Laviolette's system and all that stuff. Yeah, fine. But Shea Weber did pretty well in that system too, and he's great. He's a great player, and he's not going to hurt you at all. He was a quarterback of their defense for such a long time, and I still think it's a tough one to call, because I think Shea Weber's a more consistent player than PK Subban, and I feel like PK has some nights that are not as good as others, but has moments where he's spectacular. And and you see that with Shea Weber, you knew exactly what you're getting all the time. And
Shea might hurt you. Shea might hurt you if you go in front of the net on the power play.
Yeah. And if Mike Kelsey's a couple years from declining, he might hurt him too, because
the way this trade was sold was, in the short term, it was the benefit of the Canadians, because Weber was more like we lost Pete. Weber was more like what Therrien wanted, in terms of being a two-way defenseman and a stalwart in his own zone.
Yeah.
And that Subban was younger, so that Subban would be better down the road. Well, Montreal lost in the first round, not because of Shea Weber, but because they couldn't. It was the same thing that happened the last 4 or 5 years. They can't score. And then they still have never addressed that. And PK Subban is PK Subban in Nashville.
This is the problem in this league, when GMs react and trade for players that coaches want, or feel like they'll work in a coach's system, and then the coach doesn't live that long, and all of a sudden you're like, well, why'd I make the trade? It's like the Rangers got rid of Gaborik because he couldn't play for John Tortorella, but then he won a cup with the Kings. Like, it's just, we see this happening too much. You would think at some point GMs would sort of slow on that with this kind of stuff, because how many coaches outlive their first contract?
Exactly. And for those of you asking at home, Schadenfreude is defined as pleasure derived from misfortunes of others. This word is taken from German and literally means harm joy. It's the feeling of joy of pleasure when one sees another fail or suffer misfortune. It's also borrowed from some other languages. There you go. Just that's defining Mike's word of the day.
And Autounfallversicherungsgesellschaft is the word for car insurance.
Oh, it's fantastic. All right. Wow. So we're gonna get you. Can you hang out with us a little bit more, Pete? We're gonna do a little expansion talk.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Thanks. Whenever you got to go, if you got to go, let us know. But we're only gonna be like another 15 minutes or so. So let's get into the Colorado expansion draft. This is what we want. We've been going through teams and alphabetically arrived at the Colorado Avalanche. Alphabetically arrive at. And let's talk. I'm gonna bring up planmyteam.com, which is my favorite website for this. It's really cool. Good guys over there too. And we will bring up Colorado as well and look at what we're dealing with here.
Ironically, I think that Colorado is another one of these teams that may go 8 skaters and one goaltender, simply because they have no move clauses in Francois Beauchemin and Eric Johnson. They could very easily buy out Beauchemin. I think he's one more year left in his contract.
Yeah,
that's very possible. If they do that, then they go 7-3-1. If they decide that they don't want to buy out Beauchemin, or maybe they can trade him. But if they don't, I think that they're going to protect Nikita Zadorov, who they got in the Ryan O'Reilly deal, who's 22 years old. I think they're going to protect him over the 5th and 6th forwards, which are guys like Joe Colburn and Blake Como. I mean, they're going to protect McKinnon, Duchesne, Landeskog, obviously. They're going to protect the 2 no-move guys and Tyson Barrie. But it's a choice between protecting Grigorenko or Blake Como or Joe Colburn, or maybe a Rocco Grimaldi, or
they got to protect Rocco Grimaldi. It's the best name of the league.
Actually, what's really funny, Pete. I might protect Grimaldi over the other guys because I already know what the other guys can do. Grimaldi's never really had a chance, and he is a fast player, and so I kind of wonder if you put the other guys out there. Yeah, they might take Grigorenko. It's not going to kill you. They might take Patrick Weirkoch. It's not going to kill you, but you know what? You don't really know what Grimaldi is. You traded for him. He's only 23. He might be the guy that I do want to hold on to because they're not that deep prospect-wise.
Correct. They are not that deep. And I'm just, I think about the whole idea of them protecting any defenseman other than Tyson Barrie.
Yeah.
Well,
as far as effectiveness.
Well, if they do buy out Beauchemin, then they're down. Then I think they're down to 3 defensemen that they would protect, and that's Johnson, Barrie, and Zadorov.
Right.
And then they can protect all the forwards. That's the easiest way. But we know that Colorado is not exactly a freewheeling, free-spending franchise, and that's why I think they might go the more inexpensive route and just keep Beauchemin around for the final year and maybe try to trade him.
But the most interesting guy on this roster is Varlamov because initially they put out the word that they would protect him.
Yeah.
But now are they still going to protect him with Joe Sakic sort of not in the picture and Patrick Waugh not in the picture? Like, I don't know. Like, that to me is the great unknown.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I mean, I think, yeah.
Two things. There's talk. Elliot Friedman reported 2 things yesterday that I think will be factors in Colorado. One is that Colorado is talking, and I cannot remember the name of the goaltending coach, but he's a goaltending coach who played who was coaching in the KHL, Finn, who is very familiar with Varlamov, and there's talk of him being brought to Colorado. That would sort of lean towards the possibility of them protecting and keeping Varlamov. The other thing is the talk that Kyle Dubas, the assistant general manager of the Maple Leafs, the Leafs gave permission for Colorado to talk to Dubas. Now, Dubas is on the come. He's a 30-year-old guy. He's very astute. He's very smart. He may be sort of blocked in Toronto because Lou Lamoriello does not appear to be ready to retire, and Mark Hunter was promoted from director of player personnel to assistant general manager. So he might, not have a path to be GM in Toronto, but if the circumstances are right in Colorado, I could see him going to the Avalanche if he's given enough control there.
Well,
when would that happen, too? That's the other question, huh?
Right. Yeah. When would that happen? That's a good question. Here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
If Dubas, let's say, somehow is in power before this expansion draft, Calvin Pickard just had a good Worlds. Are you really going to leave him unprotected? I mean, Varlamov, you could afford to lose that salary and do better things with it.
Yeah, Pickard's a good one. I mean, they have a good defense in there, a good goalie there, and I for one don't think the Colorado Varlamov's a very specific kind of goalie who plays well in front of behind specific kind of teams, and I don't think Colorado is that kind of team that he plays well behind. Even though he's a great goalie,
Yeah, but he almost single-handedly. I mean, he single-handedly got them.
Yeah, no, he's a great goalie. There's no question about it. But they need a stable. They need a kind of goalie that's going to freeze the puck all the time.
Picard's that guy.
And Pickard is that guy. They need that like the difference that you've seen in these playoffs, like between Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray. Like Matt Murray is just freezing the puck all the time. He's settling the defense down. He can't handle the puck very well, but it's okay because they all trust him. And where Marc-Andre Fleury is putting the puck back into play, everything's kind of frantic. Where sometimes Penguins catch people off guard with it, so there's these benefits. But I think Matt Murray is better for the Penguins right now.
Pete, you've seen this team 4 or 5 times a year playing the Preds in the division. To me, I look at them and I'm like, there's great core talent with McKinnon and with Duchesne and Landeskog and a couple good defensemen. Where they depart from other teams is there's no depth there. I think they need like 3 defensemen and three or four forwards before they can even contend for a playoff spot.
I agree with that. And I'm asking one of you guys, do you think that if Landeskog and or Duchesne are dealt, do you think they get dealt before this expansion draft?
No, I don't think it matters.
No, because I think they're part of either protection scheme. I think that they get dealt at the draft, depending on what they can get back and who. Like if it's the Islanders, if it's Montreal, whoever Duchesne or Landeskog go to, who's going to offer up the biggest package. Now the thing is, those other teams might be willing to offer up a bigger package before expansion because of the protection aspect to it. So maybe it happens before June the 21st, but I think it could happen at the draft or even after July 1.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, the funny thing is, I never talk about rumors with teams that are still playing, but a lot of people in Colorado are talking about the Predators as a great place to send Matt Duchesne because they see the Predators as having all these defensemen and as a situation where they could actually pull something out of there. I don't. If you're a team that's just kind of sending a finals, I don't see why you would do that at all. But it's one of those interesting situations where there's not a lot of teams that have the defense that also want Duchesne and Landeskog. Like you have a situation, teams who want Duchesne and Landeskog, like for example, Montreal really wants Duchesne.
Yeah.
But they don't have a defenseman to send out there.
Yeah, the big failure of this roster and this organization right now is the fact that Will Butcher will become a UFA the same way Jimmy Vesey did, and they need him in the worst way.
Yeah,
they need a guy like that.
Let's talk about Fowler briefly, because I want to get that. He's an really interesting case. He just could not have been a better player than he was in the playoffs for this team. A lot of people are kicking themselves when you could have gotten him last year. This time last year, you could have gotten Cam Fowler for about a second-round draft pick and a half-decent prospect.
Yeah. And
here you are sitting, with now he looks like a top 2 pairing guy, and if not a top guy.
Yeah, top.
He was the horse in that series, without question.
He was the horse, and we often talked that he might have been the best player for the Anaheim Ducks throughout the playoffs at times. So when it all comes down to it, but he's going to be expensive. Mike, you brought this up. Elliot Friedman brought up he's going to be, thinks he could be an $8 million player. I don't know if that's
Friedman said that he talked to a couple NHL general managers, and they said that when he hits unrestricted free agency next summer, they could see him getting 7 years times $8 million. Now, you have to say that a couple general managers would, I'm sure they have a vested interest in driving up the price on Fowler so it costs more for Anaheim to re-sign him. But it also opens up possibilities. If they sign Fowler, if they're trying to get him locked up after July 1st, they're probably going to have to trade a guy like Sami Vatanen, who they're paying close to $5 million on a long-term deal, to afford to fit Fowler into their budget. Because if they're talking about $8 million or close to that, you're talking about paying him as much as Kessler, Getzlaf, and Perry. And you can't have 4 $8 million players on your roster without paring down someplace else. Now, the one benefit that they have is they have so many young defensemen right now that for a year or two, they can get away with paying that much for their top-end talent because Montour and Theodore and Manson will all be on their entry-level deals. But next year, they're all up. They're all RFAs. So it's a short-term thing.
So
I think based on the treatment, Fowler's going UFA. I don't think there's any chance he signs with Anaheim. I just don't. I think they had their chance and they blew it. And I think that's probably the way that his camp probably feels about it. I don't know for sure. I don't have any inside sources, but that's just my guess.
Well, Mike, I was communicating with Mike during the playoffs with Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello in the stands here in Nashville. And we certainly felt that they were, don't know for sure, surveying that defense core of the Ducks.
Oh yeah,
total sense.
And this is the thing, because Russ and I were talking this morning about this. If you have the Leafs who can't sign JVR to a long-term deal, and Anaheim that can't sign Fowler to a long-term deal, then that kind of swap. I mean, maybe there'll be an extra player thrown in there, but that kind of swap would be beneficial to both teams because JVR can score and be on the line with either Kessler or Getzlaf, and Fowler would probably be the number one pairing with the Leafs. It's a short-term solution. I don't know. Fowler is more than likely going to follow what Russ said. He's going to go UFA because just like Shattenkirk, he's going to get a payday, and he's only 26 years old next year when he hits free agency. So you're not talking about a guy who's at the end of his prime. He's just entering his prime. So he could make boatloads.
As a defenseman, I mean, that's crazy young. Although the name I keep hearing today and yesterday when I was looking into this was Brandon Montour, that he was the guy that was going to be moved out, that they were going to trade him.
I would think that would be the dumbest thing they could do, to be honest.
I mean, Montour proved in the playoffs. I mean, Pete.
Yes.
Oh, I know.
He looked like in terms of offensive ability, and he would, defensively he was fine. In terms of offensive ability, he looked to be at 21 years old, almost the equal of Fowler. He was jumping into offensive rushes.
Yep.
He was playing the point on the power play at times. I can't see them moving him. He's cheap right now.
Yes.
Very cheap.
Right. No, he is 22.
22. Yeah.
But he is very cheap. But at the same point, that also does make him very valuable in terms of what you can get back. You're not going to be able to trade Cam Fowler and necessarily and get back as much because someone's going to have to sign him to that deal. Where Montour, when you have as much defensive depth as they have, it comes down to Vatanen or Montour, and if I was them, I would be looking to move Vatanen, but they seem to be
me too.
Montour. At least that's where they are right now. And the other thing I wanted to touch on briefly was that I actually saw this morning was the Anisimov rumors, which actually are that Chicago is looking to move Anisimov.
Yeah,
and that this is known. I've had three people tell me this today. One person a couple days ago, and this to me is kind of a shocker. I thought, Anisimov, I know they have to make room for salary, but
it's not a shocker because this is what Chicago does every year. Yeah, but they gave him the new contract. They gave him over $4 million. They gave him a no move clause. But the thing is that they've done that with other players, and with young guys like Hartman and Hayden and Tyler Mott coming up. And they need that cap room. So,
Pete, besides Pekka Rinne, what was wrong with the Blackhawks in that series? I mean,
what was wrong? They just could not get anything generated.
Yeah.
I mean, they had one lead in the series.
Yeah.
In Game 3, went up 2-0, and then that ends in overtime on a goal by Kevin Fiala. They just a club that can score wasn't able to. Right.
They can't score. I mean, and it was shocking too because my gosh, Patrick Kane is such a playoff performer.
Is he ever?
And the Predators just had his number. It really felt as if the Predators were so fired up because they played that team so many times, and they were just ready. They were
ready for that, and it knocked everybody's eyes out.
Yeah. And Laviolette has had pretty good success. The Flyers took a really subpar Flyers team took the Hawks to 6 games in the Stanley Cup Finals that shouldn't have.
You'd only say what goaltender was beaten for the winner.
Yeah,
to tell you that was a subpar team.
It really was.
We also have Harry Zolnarchuk on, so Harry brings that.
I have talked about one of the funniest things from a Philadelphia perspective. That Harry the Z, he was called here, and my gosh, it is one of the most funny things to actually see him. I remember Russ, you saying on the podcast, did you even know that Zolnarchuk was still playing?
Yeah, I did. I said when he got out on the ice, I'm like, how is he even still playing? And then But I said Laviolette. I guess he's a guy that's Laviolette's been, making sure he's the organization.
That guy, because he can do both things, and he can do all those things. That to me is what's going to be so great about this next round. What do you have as far as a draft prospect for us today, Russ?
All right, so I've got a second generation prospect, Cal Foote. His dad, Adam Foote. We all remember Adam Foote.
Oh man, is he compared to Adam Foote? Because there was a period of time when every defenseman coming up was compared to Adam Foote.
Yep. He is not comparable to Adam Foote because I think in a lot of ways he'll be a better skater and score more points. But I also think that's the product of the game today. I mean, Foote did have a 30-point year once with 11 goals, but that wasn't his game, right? So now his son has had a 5-point game this year. He actually is one of those guys that, the same as Ivan Provorov, he gets the shot on net. It's not fancy. It's not the best one-timer, but it gets there. And I would rather have a guy that it gets there than a guy that looks great doing it. Like, that's just me. He leads the rush well. He does play strong defense. He's a pretty good-sized kid already. He's 6'3", 209. He's got a long reach. He's one of those guys that keeps the puck alive in the offensive zone. He does that really, really well. He is a good skater. He's got the active stick, the excellent first pass. And Adam Foote had a real good first pass too, so there is that with that. But he also did a great job in the top prospect game covering Nico Hischier, who will be, either the first or second pick. And I looked at that matchup and I said, that's a matchup that could transfer to the NHL one day, and he looked good. So, and actually he didn't have a 5-point game. My eyes were looking at a different player, sorry. But everything else I said is what is about him. And so, you know what? I think at the end of the day, he'll go somewhere, probably somewhere in the late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, and Russ and I were talking about Foote because I've been looking at defensemen in connection with Toronto, who picks at 17, and depending on what he does at the draft combine, if he tests out well, it could raise his stock. But if you look at what the Leafs are looking for, and I mean, there's other teams too that are looking for defense. So I'm just talking specifically about Toronto. He's a right-hand shot defenseman who's a bigger guy who you could characterize as more of a stay-at-home guy, but I think he's got more aspects to his game than just that. He's got the mobility. So he would be a perfect fit 2 or 3 years down the line as an NHL defenseman. And I always loved the bloodlines his father was a fantastic defenseman. I think if he's there at 7,
makes me feel older when this happens. This is
If he's there at 17, I think Toronto takes him. I think he's a fantastic prospect.
Guys, I have to apologize. I'm going to have to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having me on here today.
Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Okay, looking forward to it. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, right now, Cal Foote's 6'3", 209. So he's even a little bigger than the numbers I had on him earlier this year. So, I mean, when you have a body like that, he had 57 points this year, probably the quietest 57 points of a defenseman because no one really talks about his offense. No, really. I mean,
it's hard to have a quiet 57 points as a defenseman, so I believe you. That's pretty.
Right? I mean, Mike, when you hear Cal Foote, everybody says, well, yeah, he's great on defense, great defensive defenseman. They don't talk about his offense at all, but he has it.
Right.
Adam Foote was a prototypical guy for a while. I mean, his dad was always everybody wants the next Adam Foote. That was what everybody was looking for a while.
Yeah, and in the playoffs, he had 7 points in 14 games. Yeah. He's really good two-way. And the point is, he could be someone similar to point production of Ryan McDonough where, when you saw McDonough at first, you were like, I don't know. What could Ryan McDonough really put up with points? And then one year he had what this year is probably his best point year. So it happens. And I think these guys work so hard on it that he's going to get taken on the strength of his defense first, but I think the offense could be there down the line.
Yeah.
All right, rumor chart time. The Hockey Buzz rumor chart is a speculation chart that I put out. I update it every day, a couple times a day, and it's basically just based. And what's kind of fun about it is I put out rumors as well, so I don't not write about things put on the rumor chart. But sometimes I'm told things off the record or little things, and I can use that. I can use those things in kind of predicting who I think is going to go where. So there's some speculative things that are hidden in the rumor chart, which is kind of fun. And it's part of, if you're a season ticket holder at Hockey Buzz, it's $20 a year or $3.99 a month or something like that. So you really appreciate it. It helps pay to keep the lights on around here. So here's here's 3 players for today. I want to start with Patrick Eaves, who is I had a long talk with people down in Dallas, and they really do like him. The thought is that they're going to try to get him back in there. He had a big injury. There's going to be an issue is whether or not he's not the youngest player, but he's not super old either.
No.
And he's got a lot of he has a lot of potential. He had a great scoring year this year. It's a shame. He was a big part for Anaheim, and I think that his loss was a lot bigger than people kind of let on to, because he wasn't there all year, because he was people don't think about him, but they traded for him for a reason. He definitely would have helped them.
I mean, they gave up a first round pick and got a round and a half out of him. So
right. Right.
It's still a tough trade, but Eves worked up his trade value this year with a great year. Can he basically do it again? That's the big question.
Yeah. I mean, he had his best offensive year, and I think in a decade in Dallas. So it would make a lot of sense for Dallas to want to bring him back. Plus, like I said, they got a pick for him. I don't think he had any kind of no trade clause, but I'm sure, it's not unheard of to bring a guy back after you traded him at the deadline.
Yeah.
I don't know about the interest in Toronto, simply because they have so many young wingers, and I think the only way that they'd be interested is if they make a JVR trade, because then they probably want a veteran presence on the wing. But I keep going back to a guy like Justin Williams if they trade JVR. So maybe that's a plan B. I'd
rather go with Patrick Eves, because just because Justin Williams is a lot older than Patrick Eves, and I think that
but they're talking. So that's the thing. They're talking short. They're if they bring a veteran in, they're talking a short term, probably 2 years. They're not going to want to sign anybody long term, and you're more likely to get Justin Williams to take a 2-year deal than Patrick Eves. I think Patrick Eves is 31. He's probably looking for a 3 or 4 year deal. And then I don't think Toronto, and I don't think a lot of teams out there want to sign a 31-year-old to.
No, he's not getting a 4-year deal.
He feels like got a lot more miles on him left. Williams really did look like he ran out of steam this year.
He did.
I mean, he had his game 7. He still tried to play well.
He had a great playoff.
He did have a great playoff, but I don't know.
He had 24 goals during the regular season. I don't know.
No, it's true. It's true. It just looked a little bit slower to me. Like, I don't know, the speed. Speed was the thing and whether or not that, that's always one of the first things that goes. He still obviously can grind it out and get goals, but Sammy Vatanen. Oh, by the way, look, really, Columbus with Patrick Eves, I think could be a dark horse. I dropped him a little bit here because I heard more about Dallas wanting him more, but I could easily swap Dallas, and I could easily swap Toronto and Columbus here and have Columbus at 20%, Toronto at 10. I think Columbus is a dark horse there in a big way. It does not look like, I heard there's like a 20% chance they're going to get back Sam Gagner, so they're going to need extra scoring. Sammy Vatanen, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Boston and New Jersey, 2 teams that really like him.
Now, there's some speculation. Again, Elliot Friedman yesterday talked about the Dallas Stars with the number 3 overall pick, and their want to find a defenseman that can help them win now. And with all the Fowler talk that we talked about earlier in the show, if they want to sign Fowler to a long-term extension and need to clear money, that Dallas, that the number 3 pick is available, and what about a Vatanen for the number 3 overall pick? I think that's I think that's pie in the sky. Maybe, and the thing is, Anaheim doesn't have another first-round pick, so it's not a trade down scenario. It's number 3 overall for a defenseman.
That's way too much for Vatanen.
Never do it.
It's probably way too much.
Yeah, but I'm a big Vatanen fan, but that's too much.
You know what? If I'm Boston, I'll offer up like Danton Heinen or Ryan Spooner. That's what I'll offer them, because I know that you have to get rid of this guy or you've got a problem. So that's what I'm offering you. And
if I'm Bob Murray, I'm asking. You're not going to get McAvoy. You're probably not going to get Brandon Carlo, but I'm asking for Zach. I'm asking for Zach Senyshyn. I'm asking for Forsbacka Carlson. I'm asking for guys.
It won't happen.
Well, then you're not getting him. Then you're not getting
a defenseman going back. It's not going to be a defenseman.
You're stuck with them.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a defenseman for sure. And then finally, our 10, Anisimov, which we talked about earlier. I did hear the Rangers early on about a couple of days ago, but then someone told me that just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I don't think he was completely happy there.
Yeah.
I think they misused him, and I don't think he wants to go back there. I'd be shocked.
This does feel like a great spot for Buffalo, though. I have to say, this does seem like.
Does it?
Yeah, to me it does. I mean, I think this gives them a solid. I mean, they really do need.
Well, they have a 1-2 up the middle right now of Eichel and Ryan O'Reilly. So you're talking about spending $4 million a year on a third line center. in Anisimov. And I think Anisimov has proven
Yeah,
that
but
he can.
to win in the Eastern, you need 3 centers like that. You do.
Yeah, but you're paying too much. That's what I'm saying. It's the salary. I mean, with all the dead money that Buffalo has in Molson, in Ennis, in there's a Kane if they don't get rid of him. I mean, I can't see them taking on a salary like Anisimov unless they clear some of those guys out.
I'll give you a team that's not on this list that I think would have interest in them, definitely has assets, and definitely needs them. That's the Philadelphia Flyers. They need a big centerman. Absolutely need one to bridge the gap. Even if they're drafting a centerman this year, there was a ridiculous article out there that tried to make the case that, let's say they get Nico Hischier. Well, this is terrible for Mike Vecchione. And I'm thinking, somebody wrote that on my Facebook page. I'm like, how is that even an issue? Like, most likely Hischier goes back overseas this year anyhow, if he gets drafted by the Flyers. And the thing is, Vecchione's like a fourth-line center. They're not going to bring in Hischier to play fourth line. They're not going to do it.
Is Filppula a factor at all?
Very little. I think they like him. They're not going to give big money to Filppula. He's got another year.
No, he's got another year. I think he's got another
placeholder. Year. He's a placeholder. I don't think he's anything more than that. And so I think if they brought in a guy like Anisimov, that would really help them up the middle, because then it would make a big change. Actually, you could really what you could do is you could put Claude Giroux on the wing if you wanted to.
I don't think you ever want to do that, though. Really, I mean, he's such a playmaker. I wouldn't. That to me, that's his.
Is he such a playmaker anymore? Maybe you need more goals out of Claude Giroux. Maybe this is a way of getting them. I'm not saying it's something they're thinking about. I'm just saying at some point somebody would have to play wing. And you know what? Has Claude Giroux been that great on faceoffs? I'm going to look it up.
Well, he was before last year. Last year he had a tough time.
Yeah, last year I don't think was a good year. Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but can you say that Claude Giroux, after being injured the last 2 years,
it's the same.
Is dependable enough to be a number one center, and there maybe the Flyers are looking to like lessen the workload for him a little bit.
He was at 55%. It's still a good faceoff percentage, but he was 57, 56. Like he is dropping a little bit. I'm just saying, at some point.
Yeah. No, at some point you're right.
58 points is not going to cut it for Claude Giroux, and 14 goals is not going to cut it. If you want him to score more goals, you could put him on the wing. You could. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree with that. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today, guys. But I went into – there was a good show. Oh, let me stop this here. And I'll look into that. I'll look into seeing if the Flyers have any interest. Of course, the Flyers tell you nothing these days, but we'll see if I can dig out anything in terms of that goes on. The Flyers have dealt with the Hawks before, so that's a team that they don't mind dealing with. They've shown that. And for Chicago, you would think they would want to trade him out of the conference, maybe out of the division, like that. I'm not the biggest Anisimov fan. I think he benefited from having talent around him in Chicago.
Yeah, he's a pretty good goal scorer. He is, and he's a big body. If nothing else, he's a 6'4" guy.
He's a big goal scorer, that's for sure. And big centers, they no question about that. That would put Braden Shen. To me, it would make an interesting situation with Braden Shen. That's who I think would be what the Flyers would then do with Braden Shen if Anisimov.
Maybe you could even swap him for Filppula. I'd be okay with that.
Because Filppula only has 1 year left in his contract. That would be a way of clearing out. You're taking almost an equal cap hit, but you're clearing out 3 years of a contract.
But you're gaining a lot of size and strength, which is what the Flyers need.
Yeah,
that's true. There's no hockey tonight unless you want to watch the Memorial Cup, which is on, I think.
Yeah, I'll be watching it.
And it was a blowout last night, wasn't it?
Seven goals. Wow.
Yeah. But it's always fun to watch. And
but they got blown out. St. John's got blown out before that, so they recovered.
Well, like we saw last night again, whenever a team has gotten blown out, and they actually brought it up, they started bringing it up a lot. But something I've been bringing up for a long time is that in the playoffs, the team gets blown out. It's not always a good thing. They tend to lose the next game.
I still don't think that was the factor in the Pittsburgh game. I think it was the refereeing. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe. Yep. But the great news is for everybody is we get a game 7.
It's good news for Kermit.
We get a game 7. It's good news for Kermit. It's good news for the Predators that these teams have beat each other up for one more game. So game 7 comes on Thursday. That'll be a fun one. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon.